I'm Charles Busch, and I'd like to read to you a few passages from my upcoming memoir, This Never Leaves the Dressing Room. After I graduated from Northwestern, I wasn't prepared to return to New York. When you're an aspiring actor from another city, there's a point when you feel ready to hit New York. It's more confusing when you're from New York. If you're not ready, well, then what do? After 24 hours back in my Aunt Lil's apartment, I turned around and returned to Chicago. I promptly wrote my college roommate Ed and me a short theatrical vehicle, a parody of the 1943 Bette Davis Miriam Hopkins movie, Old Acquaintance, which Ed renamed Old Koozies. We performed it twice at a very popular new wave club called La Mer Vipère. There was no stage, except for a tiny platform high above the crowd in the far corner of the cavernous room. It was exhilarating, performing my own writing for the first time before a giddy, gay audience and playing a film-inspired heroine for people who shared my love of old movies. I began my decade of looking for work to pay the rent that would not interfere with my theatrical ambitions. Now, I admire people who have the ability to throw themselves into, anything, 100% into any situation. Alas, I am not one of them. If it's not in my exact field of interest, I give 70%, maybe 50%. I lasted longer at the movie memorabilia shop than I did at the jeans store or the ice cream parlor. But the day always arrived when my reduced hours were further reduced to 0 hours. There was one part-time job that I found extremely stimulating and which I was able to give 100% of myself. Callboy. Imagine a graceful hand balancing a long cigarette holder and lightly scanning the list of want ads in a gay newspaper. David's models. One had to submit to not only an interview, but a brief roll in the hay with the physically unappetizing boss. Well, less unpleasant than you would think. I got by with a lot of posing and working the personality. I clued in quickly that my waif-like image wouldn't necessitate too much sexual activity. The men who demand the services of a big butch gay fantasy figure want their money's worth of hardcore action. The clients who desired my type tended to be older gentlemen who were grateful for an hour's worth of gentle, naked interplay, tender cuddling, and often actual conversation. It wasn't dissimilar to my brief foray into apartment cleaning. When it was apparent to the elderly women clients that I didn't have a clue how to clean an apartment, they rather enjoyed showing me the proper way to clean a stove or mop a hardwood floor. Much of the time would be spent poring over their photo albums and talking about their late husbands. The apartments weren't spick and span, but I left the old ladies a little less lonely. There's nothing as divine as being paid in cash. No matter how sensible one might be, thoughts of expensive suede boots and designer leather pants percolate in your cash-happy mind while holding a thick wad of bills. I also enjoyed being a rent boy. I'm a natural-born interviewer. I have a curiosity about people. Everyone has a story, and most people don't get a chance to tell it. There was the elderly grandfather from the suburbs, retired podiatrist, whose family would never imagine Gramps was indulging in a gay-paid afternoon encounter avec moi. There was the ethereal, wan high school kid, mercilessly bullied by his schoolmates and ignored by his family, who saved up his money to pay for an hour of my holding him tenderly and letting him know that he was cute and of value. Now I'm going to skip to a later chapter. Now, 4 years later, I was now living in New York again. I had begun performing solo material in small cabaret rooms in Manhattan. I still was far from being able to earn a living in show business. There was an ad in a gay paper that male strippers were wanted for a 2-week tour of Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh. It paid a whopping $1,000 for the 2 weeks. That was a lot of money. No more office temp work, stuffing envelopes, or being a receptionist in a zipper factory. For at least a few months for me. I circled that ad in red. Could be an illuminating experience, particularly if I stayed true to my own whimsical nature and observed how my personality affected my surroundings. I did that with every job. In that way, I was always the star of my own wacky screwball comedy. The other reason I wanted to take this job was that I thought it might be good to take a break from my androgynous self and get in touch with my innate masculine sexuality. You didn't have to do much, just get naked, play with yourself, and dance butch, which means move to the rhythm in a sullen, heavy-limbed manner. The first stop was Pittsburgh. It was just me and another dancer, a cute, dark-haired Italian boy named Danny. I can't say I saw much of Pittsburgh, although Pittsburgh saw quite a bit of me. Danny and I did about 10 shows a day. There was a featured star on the bill, a well-known gay porn star named Derek Stanton. Like many headliners, he was cordial, but aloof. Now, I'm not sure where Derek Stanton was staying, but Danny and I weren't given hotel rooms, but merely cubicles at a local gay bathhouse. At first, I was enjoying the sleazy atmosphere and the theatrical challenge of removing my clothes to the disco beat of the music and sustaining an erotic mood. The novelty wore off after about 4 days in Pittsburgh. I'd gotten the gist and was ready to come home. However, I had to not only finish the week in Pittsburgh, but do another full week in Washington, D.C. By the time I arrived in our nation's capital, I was despondent. I phoned my roommate Ken in New York. It's so grim and depressing. I don't know how I'm going to get through the week. Well, don't you get any kind of dinner break? About an hour and a half. Well, call up my friend Scott. He lives in D.C. Have dinner with him. Get yourself out of that milieu. I took his advice and phoned Scott, who exclaimed, "Perfect timing! I'm having a party. All sorts of cool people are here. Come on over." I cabbed it over to his apartment near DuPont Circle. Scott's place was teeming with interesting people, many of whom were involved in the Washington theater community. After about a half hour, Scott suggested, "Why don't you do one of your 10-minute comic monologues?" I was apprehensive. To this day, I get rabbity and shy when asked to perform at a party. Odd that I had no hesitancy jumping around naked on a platform to the tune of Diana Ross singing "I'm Coming Out." I stood near the artificial fireplace and performed a short piece from my repertoire called That's Showbiz. The party guests were a great audience. It was so heartening being back in my own milieu. When I finished, a tall, imposing man approached me and introduced himself as Bart Whiteman, the artistic director of a nonprofit theater called the Source Theater Company. He proposed that I return to D.C. in 6 months to do my show as part of his upcoming season. Now, this would be the first time that I would be doing a full 2-act version of my solo repertoire, and by far my most ambitious professional opportunity. The Source Theater itself was quite small, and yet it was thought wiser for me to do my show at an even smaller alternative theater space. It was a former bank vault or a fur vault, I can't remember which, but it was large enough to accommodate a solo performer and 20 seats. Well, let me tell you, I received glowing reviews from the supermarket weeklies, the alternative press, the gay press, an out-and-out rave from the Washington Post. The entire engagement was sold out. True, there were only 20 seats, but I did 6 shows a week for a month, and then the shows extended another month and another month. It was my first feeling of success, a validation that no, I was not deranged to be pursuing this career. Thank you.